We're going to have a conversation today about how to know whether you or somebody you know is struggling with their emotional maturity. In other words, how to know if someone is emotionally immature. Now, before we go into this, we're going to have a little bit of a talk about you and your tendency to maybe want to shame or blame yourself for maybe being emotionally immature. Maybe you're going to relate to many of these signs and you're going to be tempted to go in and blame or shame yourself. But that's just not going to be helpful, and it's not appropriate, because chances are the reason that you are struggling with your emotional maturity is because of what you were taught, what you were told, what you witnessed, what was modeled to you, what was in front of you in your formative years when you were forming how to relate to yourself and others and to your emotions. You learned ways of handling your emotions that were immature. And if you hadn't learned any better, then how can you know any better? So this isn't about blaming or shaming ourselves. This is just about shedding some light on it and being willing to look at it in an honest and compassionate way so that we can create better for ourselves. So we can create better for ourselves on the inside, better for ourselves on the outside, have better relationships with both ourselves and with others when we learn how to deal with our emotions in a mature way when they are triggered. Yeah? So if we have an agreement that you're not going to blame and shame yourself, you're just going to use this as an opportunity to reflect and to grow and to shed some light on some things that you want to work on so that you can feel better, not so that you can be better. This isn't about making you a better person. You don't need to be a better person. You're already enough because you are worthy, because you were born. But this is just about feeling better, about having better relationships, having a better life because you are feeling better and showing up in ways that are more conducive to that. So let's talk about this in just a second here. If you're new here, welcome to our incredible little corner on the internet. Take a second, introduce yourself in the comment section below. If you are back again, it is always good to have you. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. The button's about right down there. And if you could like the video, if you think you're going to get something out of it, if you're already getting something out of it, then hit the like button. That's really helpful. Just gets these talks in front of more people so that we can all learn and heal and grow together. Either way, my name is Kristina, and I am a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, and the creator of my membership community, the Shift Society, that is an incredible community full of humans doing this work, supporting each other, helping each other, getting guidance and support from me and the other Shift coaches, and just really deepening this work and creating consistency and going through the steps to be able to manage our mind and emotions in a healthy, lasting and deep way. So you can get more information about the Shift Society in the description below and get on the wait list. I help heart-centered humans break through the crap that is holding them back so that they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And a lot of the crap that holds us back is being stuck in emotional immaturity. So let's work on this. And just knowing again that emotional maturity has nothing to do with age, has nothing to do with your biological age. It just has to do with how you developed your emotional way, how you developed your way of dealing with your emotions, how you were learned to make your way through life, through interactions, through circumstances and situations. And if you learn how to do it, like I said, through what you were taught, you were told, what you observed, what you absorbed in an immature way from humans who did that, were coping themselves and didn't know how to do things in a mature way and were handling life in an emotionally immature way, that's what you learned. It can also come about if your emotional needs weren't met as a child and you just don't know how to have your needs met in a healthy way because they weren't. And so now as an adult, you don't know how to have your needs met in a healthy way. So you become reactive, you become defensive, you take things personally, you blame others, you get stuck in overthinking situations, and or you try to control other people through guilt or through manipulation. if that's what you learned, if that's what you went through, if that's what your response was to these circumstances, then that is what is going to be taken with you unless we understand better. And when we understand better, we can do better. And when we do better, we can have better. When we have better, we can live better. So the first sign that you might be struggling with some emotional maturity is, like I just said, if you find yourself being highly defensive. If you notice that whenever somebody says something that triggers something in you, that you get defensive about it, that you get upset about it, that you kind of are quick to clap back. You are quick to get upset about something. If you notice yourself feeling, if you feel like you're a very defensive person because you feel like you are often being offended, right? And so you find yourself being defensive, then that is a sign of emotional immaturity. The next sign is, and this is going to be a tough one, this is one I really struggled with for a while, is needing to be right. If you have to be right, if every argument is a mountain that you're willing to die on, if you are putting your stake in the ground and unwilling to waver, unwilling to consider, unwilling to listen, unwilling to contemplate, that is a sign of emotional immaturity. And often people who have to be right feel threatened because they feel like if someone proves me wrong, then I am wrong. And then a whole bunch of shame can come up around that. Or they have this identity of being someone who is really smart. Their ego is clinging to this identity of being someone who is really smart, who knows a lot of things. And then if there's any threat to that, then it can threaten your entire self-concept, where you can feel like your ego is being very threatened. And so really just looking at, if you need to be right, if you have to win at any cost, pretty much all the time, then that is a sign of emotional immaturity. The next sign is if you have a hard time creating space for or even tolerating other people's perspectives. If you are like stake in the ground, this is how it is, there's no other option, this is the way it always has been, this is the way it always has to be, and you're unwilling to consider shades of gray. You're unwilling to consider nuance. That is a sign of emotional immaturity. And again, can often come from feeling insecure, where it's like, I have to have this thing. There has to be a right and wrong in everything all the time. Because it can, and I'm going to tell you, it can feel a little bit more kind of shaky when we understand that so much is in shades of gray. So little is in black and white, right? Someone will come to me and say, well, is it this or is it this? And a therapist's favorite response is, that depends. It depends a lot of the time on what the circumstances is, what the background is, what the need is, what's happening, what's culturally relevant to the time, right? Like if we are not willing to even consider somebody else's perspective, we have to get curious as to why. Why am I not willing? What feels threatened by considering somebody else's perspective? It doesn't mean that you have to agree with them, but creating space for an attempt even to understand is what we are going for. Understanding does not mean agreeing. It just means creating more openness in our understanding of the world and maybe other people's understanding of the world, instead of insisting that it has to only be our way, and getting curious, why does it only have to be my way? The next sign of emotional immaturity, and I grew up with this one a lot, and this has been something I'm very aware of and have done a lot of work around. And this one is looking down on others to feel better about yourself. I grew up with a lot of this messaging around me, criticizing other people, finding flaws in the way people would do things, right? Looking down on people for their choices, even, insofar as like how someone chose to host others for dinner, and like, oh, I can't believe they did that, or I can't believe they served that, or like, nice that they, got the second cheapest wine in the store, like all this kind of stuff that, learning to like find the flaw, look down on other people, Find where people are not meeting your expectations that they didn't even know about in the first place. But really looking at it, if you're always looking for someone to not fulfill your expectation, even if it wasn't an expectation that you communicated, if you're only looking for what people are doing wrong, what people are not doing enough of, then you are going to find it. And chances are, if you are doing that, it's because that's what you grew up with. And I am actually really sensitive to that now when I see people, always looking for the flaws. And it does. I get activated about it because I'm just like, oh my gosh, like someone is doing this thing for you and they are trying to be generous with you, trying to do something for you, trying to honor you in some way, and you're finding why it's not good enough. Or whatever that is, right? Anytime we are looking down on somebody else to feel better about ourselves, we are punching down and we are standing on someone else's shoulders to try and raise ourselves higher. That is a sign of emotional immaturity. And it's something that needs to be worked on. So really looking at that. Are you doing that? The next sign of emotional maturity is shutting down or lashing out when you're feeling threatened in conflict. So many among us have either of the two more extreme responses or reactions when in conflict. And it goes back to that fight or flight. Do I fight when I'm feeling threatened? Do I run away and hide or avoid when I'm feeling threatened? And it might change depending on the person, the circumstance, the issue, the situation, but really just asking yourself, am I quick to lash out, to bite back, to try and cut someone off at the knees, or at any sign of discomfort or conflict or anyone having any kind of complaint about me in any way, I run away, I hide, I avoid, maybe I even ghost or cut off. That is a sign of emotional immaturity that we need to work on. The next sign is almost constantly blaming others when things go wrong. So my son, I call him a blame deflector because whenever I ask him to take accountability for something, whenever I say like, hey, that's not okay, whenever I'm like, what happened here? Why did this go wrong? Or, why is this person upset? What was your part in this? Well, I didn't do it. It's not my fault. Well, I wouldn't have done it if they hadn't done this. Or no, it wasn't because of me. No, I didn't do that. So they started it, right? Like whatever that is, he's a blame deflector, always blaming other people and saying, instead of taking a step back and being like, you know what? Like I did play a part in this. And so I'm really working on teaching him. I'm like, okay, she's upset, which means that something happened that she got upset about. So what happened? What did you say? What did you do? And he's like, well, I did this, but only because she did this. Okay. So we take a step back and be like, okay, she did this and that made you not feel good, but you had a choice on how you were going to respond to that. So when your sister was teasing you and you punched her, she may have been teasing you, but you are responsible for how you respond to that. Now, I'm not saying it's okay that she teased you, but I'm also saying that you have the responsibility for what you're going to do with that. Are you going to ask her to stop? Are you going to tell me, right? Come and talk to me about it. Are you going to talk to her about it and say, why did you do that? I don't like that. Set your own boundary. Please stop, right? So really just looking at it, you're always blaming other people for your problems. Well, I wouldn't feel this way if they hadn't done this. Well, I wouldn't be struggling with this if they hadn't done this. And yes, we talk about how our upbringing and how our parents and our primary caregivers and the biggest influential people in our lives have impacted how we feel about ourselves. So we're not going to blame ourselves for that. We're not going to blame ourselves for some of the unhealthy or unhelpful or maladaptive behaviors and choices and habits that we have. But we're also not just going to deflect that blame and be like, oh, well, it's all their fault. Now, they had an impact on that, but they are also human beings that had their own issues and their own struggles. And one thing I learned when I became a parent is that parents are just older people. They don't have it all figured out. If they haven't done their own work and their own healing, then they're going to make mistakes. And so yes, saying what this person did have an impact, it absolutely had an impact on me. But I am responsible for what I do with that now. Absolutely, it hurt me, it caused me pain, maybe even it caused me trauma. But I am responsible for how I respond to that, what I do with that. So I'm going to say also too, if you struggle with taking responsibility for yourself, then, or responsibility for your part in things, or responsibility for what you do with it now, then chances are there's a lot of shame there, where you think that if I did something wrong or bad to contribute to this outcome, whatever that was, if it's appropriate, right? It's not going to be appropriate in every situation, but if you did something, it doesn't make you a bad person, right? You might be mixing up, I did something wrong or bad or unhelpful or unhealthy with I am wrong or bad or unhealthy, right? You might be turning that against yourself, which, because of all that shame, it can feel very overwhelming to take any responsibility, because that's actually not taking responsibility. That's taking on self-shaming and self-deprecation, and also a sign of emotional immaturity. So learning how to take a responsibility for your part without using it as a reason to pick yourself apart. The next sign of emotional immaturity is taking everything personally. This one's pretty self-explanatory. If you have a tendency to be like, that person looked at me sideways, they hate me. That person didn't invite me, they don't want anything to do with me. That person had feedback on my presentation, they think I'm an idiot, right? Whatever that is, that person commented on my cooking, must mean I'm a terrible cook and I'm a failure, or whatever that is, right? Taking things personally, feeling like it's against you, that person forgot to call me, well, they don't love me, right? Like taking it personally and drawing these conclusions that usually end up with you being a loser, a failure, a reject, unlovable, unworthy. It's a bit much, and it is a sign of emotional immaturity. The next sign, passive-aggressive behavior. I've done it. I grew up in a family with a lot of passive-aggressive behavior. I've really had to work on undoing that. Really work on being more clean and classy in my communication. But yeah, passive aggressive, and which leads into our next one, was trying to control other people through guilt tripping, trying to, control behavior, get people to do what you want by guilting them. That's a form of passive aggressive manipulation. And that is also a sign of emotional immaturity, because you're not clearly communicating what you want or need. You're going about it in this sort of roundabout way that kind of ends up feeling icky for everyone. So if you have some of these habits, believe you me, I have struggled with all of them myself. You are not alone. I'm not here just like pointing fingers. It is about creating awareness and understanding and accountability. Because when we understand better and know better, we can change things. We can do better. We can have better. We can create better. Often, emotional immaturity, more often than not, comes from our own inability, not being taught or trained or told how to regulate our own difficult emotions. So if you don't know what to do when you get that kind of flipping feeling in your belly, that hot feeling in the head, tingling in your armpits, if you don't know what to do and you end up doing some of these things, you get defensive, you get reactive, you get angry, you blame others, you run away, you hide, shame yourself, you lash out, whatever that is, it's because you haven't been taught. You never learned. It's not your fault. But what do we want to do with that now? You haven't been taught how to regulate your emotions when they come up, or move with and through your emotional discomfort when you're triggered. And so this is part one of a 2-part series on emotional immaturity and working on becoming more emotionally mature. In the next talk, that, depending on when you're watching this, it might be out already. If you're watching this right in the first week that it comes out, it won't be, but stay tuned, because the next talk is about how to start working on becoming more emotionally mature. So once we have this awareness, we're like, okay, there's some things I want to work on. If you hit all the boxes in this list, ticked all the boxes, you're not alone. I'm sure many of us have. I definitely have. And so this is about working on better. And this is about starting here and working on this so that we can feel better, have better, live better, create better for ourselves, for our relationships, for our lives. Start here. Let me know in the comment section below which one of these were you like, okay, I need a minute. Also, if you want to start working on some just self-regulation skills, how to calm yourself when you are feeling triggered, how to start just doing some exercises with keeping yourself being able to sit with uncomfortable emotions and move with and through those uncomfortable emotions, my 10-minute guided mindfulness exercise is going to be huge for that. So if you don't have it already, click the link below. Thousands of you have it, but if you don't have it yet, make sure that you get it. If you have it, go back and listen to it. If you have it and have it open that email, it's been sitting there waiting for you to open it for weeks or months or whatever, go and use that one. That's going to be really helpful for you to start learning how to regulate your emotions when you are feeling triggered. And then I'm going to teach you some more concrete skills in the next talk, but grab that 10-minute guided mindfulness exercise. So no blaming and shaming yourself. Grab the 10-minute guided mindfulness exercise, and if it's not out, get ready for it. If it is out, watch the next talk on how to start working on being more emotionally mature. Yeah? Always good to have you here. And remember to take good care of yourself, take good care of those around you, and until next time, see you soon.